Here we come, a-wassailing among the leaves so green. Here we come, a-wandering so fair to be seen. Love and joy come to you, and to you your wassail too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year. Be merry, gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Wassail, 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 wassail. We are not daily beggars that beg from door to door, but we are neighbor children whom you have seen before. Love and joy come to you, and to you your wassail too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year. Christmas is coming, the geese are getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hand. Wassail, 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 wassail. Call up the butler, off his lips, put on his golden ring. Let him bring a glass of cheer, and then too shall we sing. Fa-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la. Love and joy come to you, and to you your wassail too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year.
Everyone, and welcome to our show today. If you would all be so kind as to silence your cell phones in whatever way you want to do that, either vibrate or turn it off. And then, as is our tradition, afterwards we'll have a meet and greet out here, so that if you'd like to say something to the actors or meet somebody, we would enjoy that. Beyond that, we're just so happy to have you, because without you in all these seats, we would have no reason to be up here. So thank you, and please enjoy the show.
We consider turkey the traditional Christmas bird, but little more than a century ago, tom turkey was looked upon as an overpriced luxury item, fit only for spendthrift culinary aesthetes. Why bother when a cheaper and far more desirable fowl was readily available, the succulent Christmas goose? A holiday feast of roasted goose harkens back to the pagan winter solstice festival, from which the Christ Mass borrowed its date. Geese were first domesticated about 5,000 years ago. The Romans are credited with their spread throughout ancient Europe, and the bird came to the British Isles with Julius Caesar in 55 BC. Down through the centuries, geese proved ideal for small farmers. They lived by grazing and therefore did not require costly feed. What's more, geese are a hardy lot, able to resist disease and stand up to harsh English winters. And no farmer needs a watchdog with a flock of noisy, pugnacious geese keeping trespassers at bay. Populations grew, and with them grew the demand for a plump goose at Christmas. As December approached, gigantic flocks would be herded from upcountry farms towards the cities, then dispersed to suburban keepers for fattening and sale. We can imagine the scene on a crisp late autumn morning in the frosty byways of 19th century London. Crowds and hordes and swarms of geese, tens of thousands, honking and squabbling, white and web-footed, jostling along their merrily oblivious ways towards becoming some fortunate family's Christmas dinner. Charles Dickens captures the goose dining experience movingly in a passage from A Christmas Carol. Grace was succeeded by a breathless pause as Mrs. Cratchit, looking slowly all along the carving knife, prepared to plunge it in the breast. But when she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose all round the board, and even Tiny Tim, excited by the two young Cratchits, beat on the table with the handle of his knife and cried, "Hurrah!" Such a delectable bird features prominently in our show's first act, an unusually whimsical Sherlock Holmes mystery adapted from an 1892 Arthur Conan Doyle short story, The Case of the Christmas Goose.
I called upon my friend Sherlock Holmes upon the second morning after Christmas to wish him the compliments of the season. He was lounging in a dressing gown, a pile of crumpled morning papers at hand. He was examining a seedy and disreputable hat. You are engaged? Perhaps I disturb you.
Not at all. I'm glad to have a friend with whom I can share my results. The matter is a perfectly trivial one, but there are points not entirely devoid of interest and even of instruction.
I suppose that the hat, homely as it looks, has some deadly story linked to it? That it is the clue which will guide you in the solution of some mystery and the punishment of some crime?
No crime. Just one of those whimsical little incidents which happen when you have 4 million human beings all jostling one another within the space of a few square miles. Do you know Peterson, the patrol bobby?
Oh, yes.
It is to him that this trophy belongs.
It is his hat?
No, he found it.
Oh.
Its owner is unknown. I beg that you look upon it not as a battered old hat, but as an intellectual exercise.
What is the background of the hat?
The facts are these. On Christmas morning, Peterson was returning home from some small jollification. In the gaslight down the street, he saw a man carrying a white goose slung over his shoulder. Then a row broke out between this stranger and a little knot of roughs. One of them knocked off the man's hat. He raised his stick to defend himself, and swinging it round his head, smashed the shop window behind him.
Surely Peterson rushed to his aid.
Indeed. However, the man, shocked at having just broken the window and seeing a man in uniform rush towards him, dropped his goose and vanished. The roughs also fled, leaving Peterson alone in possession of the field of battle and the spoils of victory in the shape of that battered hat and a most unimpeachable Christmas goose.
Which surely he returned to their owner.
My dear fellow, there lies the problem. For Mrs. Henry Baker was printed upon a small card tied to the bird's leg, and the initials H.B. are legible upon the lining of the hat. However, there are thousands of Bakers and hundreds of Henry Bakers in the city of ours.
What then did Peterson do?
He brought round both hat and goose to me on Christmas morning, knowing that even the smallest problems are of interest to me. The goose we retained until this morning, when Mrs. Hudson reported that in spite of the frost, it ought to be eaten without delay. Peterson came earlier and has carried it off to fulfill the ultimate destiny of a goose. I retain the hat of the poor, unknown gentleman who lost his Christmas dinner.
Did the man missing his hat not advertise?
No.
Then what clue could you have as to his identity?
Only as much as we can deduce.
From his hat?
Precisely.
But you're joking. What can you gather from an old battered hat?
You know my methods. What can you gather yourself as to the man who has worn this?
It was a very ordinary black hat and much the worse for wear. There's no maker's name. It was pierced in the brim for a hat secure, but the elastic was missing. For the rest, it was cracked, exceedingly dusty, and spotted in several places. There had been some attempt to hide the discolored patches by smearing them with ink. I can see nothing.
On the contrary, Watson, you have seen everything. You fail, however, to reason from what you see. You are too timid in drawing your inferences.
Then pray tell me, what is it that you infer from this act?
That the man was highly intellectual is obvious, and also that he was fairly well-to-do, although he has now fallen upon bad times. He had foresight, but has less now, pointing to moral retrogression, which, when taken with the decline of his fortunes, indicates some evil influence, probably drink, which would also account for the fact that his wife has ceased to love him.
My dear Holmes!
He is a middle-aged man who leads a sedentary life, is out of training entirely, and has had his hair cut in the last few days, and anoints it with lime cream. It is also extremely probable that he has not had gas laid in his house.
You are certainly joking, Holmes.
Not in the least. Is it possible that even now, when I tell you these results, you are unable to see how they were attained?
I have no doubt that I am very stupid. But I'm unable to follow you. Well, for example, how did you deduce that the man was intellectual?
It is a question of cubic capacity. A man with so large a brain must have something in it.
The decline of his fortunes?
This hat is 3 years old. These wide brims with the curled edges came into fashion then. It is a hat of the very best quality. If this man could afford such a hat 3 years ago and has had no hat since, then he has assuredly gone down in the world.
Well, that's clear enough. But how about the foresight and the moral retrogression?
A hat securer is never sold upon hats at purchase. If this man purchased one, it is a sign of foresight, taking precaution against the wind. But since he has broken the elastic and not troubled to replace it, it is a sign of a weakening nature. On the other hand, he has endeavored to hide the stains by daubing them with ink, showing that he has not entirely lost his self-respect.
Your reasoning is certainly plausible.
The further points regarding his age and his hair are all gathered from a close examination of the lining. The dust, you will observe, is not the gritty grey dust of the street, but the fluffy brown dust of the house, showing that it was mostly hung up indoors. The marks of moisture upon the inside are proof that the wearer perspired freely and could therefore hardly have been in the best of training.
But his wife, you said that she had ceased to love him.
This hat has not been brushed for weeks. When I see you, my dear Watson, with a week's accumulation of dust upon your hat, and your wife allows you to go out in such a state, I shall worry that you have lost your wife's affection.
But he might be a bachelor.
Nay, remember the card tied to the bird's leg. It was a peace offering to his wife.
But how on earth do you deduce that the gas is not laid in his house?
One tallow stain, even 2, might come by chance. But when I see 5, there can be little doubt that the individual comes into frequent contact with burning tallow. Probably walks upstairs at night with a guttering candle in one hand and his hat in the other. Anyhow, he never got tallow stains from a gas jet. Are you satisfied?
Well, it's very ingenious, but since there has been no crime committed and no one can save the loss of a Christmas goose, well, this seems to be a rather waste of energy.
I suppose.
The goose, Mr. Holmes, the goose, sir.
Peterson, has it returned to life and flapped off through the kitchen window?
See here, sir, see what I found in its crop.
By Jove, Peterson, I suppose you know what you have got.
The precious stone, sir. It cuts into glass as it were putty.
It's more than a precious stone. It is the precious stone.
What? The Countess of Morcar's missing diamond?
Precisely. I have read the advertisement in the Times every day lately. It is absolutely unique, and a reward is offered for its return of £1,000.
£1,000, sir. Great Lord of mercy.
It was lost, if I remember right, at the Hotel Cosmopolitan.
Precisely so. I have some account of it here. John Horner, plumber, was charged with having stolen from the Countess of Morcar a most valuable gemstone. James Ryder, bellman at the hotel, gave his evidence that he had shown Horner to the Countess' dressing room to repair a pipe. Ryder was then called away. Catherine Cusack, maid to the Countess, later returned and found the hidden box in which the Countess kept her jewel lying empty upon the dressing table. Horner was arrested the same evening, but the stone was not found upon his person or in his rooms. Horner protested his innocence. He has a previous conviction for robbery. The question for us now to solve is the sequence of events leading from a rifled jewel case to the crop of a goose. Watson, our little deductions have suddenly assumed a much less innocent aspect. Here is the stone. The stone came from the goose, and the goose came from Mr. Henry Baker. So we must now set ourselves to finding this gentleman and ascertaining what part he has played in this mystery. We must try the simplest means first, an advertisement in all the evening papers.
What would you have it say?
Found a goose and a black felt hat. Mr. Henry Baker can apply for same at 6:30 p.m. at 221B Baker Street. That is clear and concise.
Very, but will he see it?
Well, he is sure to keep an eye on the papers, since to a poor man the loss was a heavy one. He was clearly so scared by his breaking the window and the approach of Peterson that he thought of nothing but flight. Since then, he must have regretted the impulse which caused him to drop his bird. Peterson, would you be so kind as to run down and have this put in the evening papers?
In which, sir?
Oh, the Globe, the Pall Mall, the Evening News Standard, and any others which occur to you.
Very well, sir. And the stone?
Ah, yes, I shall keep the stone, thank you. And Peterson, please also buy a goose and have it delivered to me here, for we must have one to give to this gentleman in place of the one which your family will soon devour.
Very well, sir.
Every good stone is the devil's pet bait. This one was found in southern China not even 20 years ago, and yet already it has a sinister history. 2 murders, a suicide, and several robberies were brought about for the sake of this crystallized charcoal. Who would think that so pretty a toy would be purveyor to the gallows and to prison? I'll lock it up in my strongbox and drop a line to the Countess to say that I have it.
So, do you think the accused man, Horner, is innocent?
I cannot tell. I think it is more likely that he is an innocent man who had no idea that the goose he was carrying was of more value than if it were made of solid gold. That, however, I shall determine with a test if we have an answer to our advertisement.
And you can do nothing until then?
Nothing.
In that case, I shall continue my professional round, but I shall come back later this evening, for I should like to see the solution of so tangled a business.
I dine at 7. Join me. Tonight it is pheasant, I believe. In view of recent occurrences, perhaps I ought to ask Mrs. Hudson to examine its crop.
It was 6:30 when I found myself in Baker Street once more. As I approached the house, I saw a tall man wearing a Scots tam o' shanter waiting outside. Just as I arrived, the door was opened, and we were shown up together to Holmes's room.
Mr. Henry Baker, I believe. Pray, take that chair by the fire. It is a cold night, and I believe your circulation is more adapted for summer than for winter.
Aye.
Is this your hat, Mr. Baker?
Bless you, my child.
We have retained it
Yes.
for some days, expecting to see an advertisement from you giving your address. I'm at a loss to know why you did not advertise.
Shillings have been at a loss for me for a number of years. I had no doubt that the gang of roughs who stole not only my hat but the bird would do me in if I advertised, sir. So I had no attempt to recover either one, sir.
Of course. By the way, about your bird, we were compelled to eat it.
Eat it?
Yeah. It would have been of absolutely no use had we not done so. But I presume that this other goose on the sideboard, which is about the same weight and perfectly fresh, will answer your needs equally well?
Certainly, sir. Certainly.
Of course, we still have the feathers, the crop, and so on of your bird, if you wish.
No. I prize what is before me, sir, and I will take it with enthusiasm. Know that to be true.
There is your hat, then, and there your goose. By the way, could you tell me where you got the other one? I'm somewhat of a fowl fancier, and have seldom seen a better grown goose.
Certainly, sir. A few of us frequent the Sticks and Stones, which is a pub next to the museum. This year, as a result of providing pence to the owner, he set aside a goose that we all would prize with enthusiasm, sir. Please know that to be true. I paid my pence, I provided everybody great dignity, and took my bird with me. You know the rest, sir. We are wonder-found by thy greatness, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. It was a pleasure to meet you. So much for Mr. Henry Baker. It is quite certain that he knows nothing of the matter. Are you hungry, Watson?
Not particularly.
Then I suggest we turn our dinner into a supper and follow up this clue while it is still hot.
Outside, the stars were shining coldly in a cloudless sky. Within a quarter of an hour, we were at the Sticks and Stones pub. Holmes pushed open the door of the private bar and ordered 2 glasses of beer from the white-aproned barmaid.
Your beer should be excellent if it is as good as your geese.
Our geese?
Yes, I was speaking to Mr. Henry Baker, a member of your goose club.
Ah, yes. But you see, sir, them's not our geese.
Ah, indeed. Whose then?
Well, I got 2 dozen of them from a stall in Covent Garden.
Indeed. I know some of them. Which one was it?
A Breckenridge is the name.
I don't know them. Well, here's to your good health and prosperity to your house. Good night.
2 minutes later, we were again out in the frosty car. We passed through a zigzag of slums as we got to Covent Garden Market.
Now for Mrs. Breckenridge. Remember, Watson, that though there is a homely goose at one end of this chain, there is at the other a man who will receive a 7-year sentence unless we can establish his innocence. It is possible that our inquiries may prove his guilt. But in any case, we have a line of investigation which has been missed by the police. Face forward then, man, and quick march.
One of the largest stalls was owned by a person named Breckenridge. And there was a woman helping a young boy put up the shutters.
Good evening. It is a cold night. Sold out of geese, I see.
Let you have 500 tomorrow morning.
Oh, that is no good.
Well, there's some at the stall at the gas flare yonder.
But I was recommended to you,
Oh boy.
the publican's wife of the Sticks and Stones.
Oh yeah. I sent her a couple of dozen.
Fine birds they were, too. From where did you get them?
Now then, mister, what you driving at? Let's have it straight now.
It is straight enough. I should like to know who sold you the geese which you supplied to the Sticks and Stones.
Well now, I shan't tell you.
It is a matter of no importance, but I don't know why you should be so hot over such a trifle.
What? You'd be ought to, maybe, if you were as pestered as I am. When I pay good money for a good optical, that should be the end of a business. But it's where are the geese, and who did you sell the geese to? Dear the flush, you'd think they were the only geese in the world.
Well, I have no connection with any other people making inquiries. If you won't tell us, the bet is off, that is all. But I have a fiver that the bird I ate is country bred.
Well then, you just lost your fiver, for it's town bred.
It is nothing of the kind.
I say it is.
Tisn't?
Tis.
I don't believe it.
You've got some cheek, you have. Do you think you know more about fowl than I? Though I've been on since I was a lass. I tell you, all those birds that went to the Sticks and Stones were town bred.
You will never persuade me to believe that.
I will bet you I am right.
It is merely taking your money, for I know that I'm right. But I'll have a sovereign on with you just to teach you not to be obstinate.
Well then, hang on. Let me get the records. Now then, Mr. Hawkshaw, you see this list?
Well,
These are my town suppliers. Now look at the third name and read it out to me.
Mrs. Oakshott, 117 Brixton Road.
Gone.
Egg and poultry supplier.
Now, the next column says what?
December 22nd, 24 geese at 7 shillings 6pence.
Quite so. And the line under that?
Sold to Mrs. Windigate of the Sticks and Stones at 12 shillings.
What have you to say now?
Sherlock Holmes turned away with an air of a man whose disgust is too deep for words. With a few yards off, he stopped under a lamppost and gave a hearty but noiseless laugh.
I dare say that if I put £100 down in front of her, she would not have given us such complete information. She was having me on a wager and would prove me wrong. Watson, we are, I fancy, nearing the end of our quest. The only point which remains is should we go on to this Mrs. Oakshott now or leave it for tomorrow? We have just learned that there are other people asking about our very special...
His remarks were cut short by a loud hubbub which broke out from the store which we had just left.
I've had enough of you and your geese.
Turning round, we saw a rat-faced fellow standing in the circle of
If you come pestering me again, I'll set the dog at you. And what have you to do with it anyway? Did I buy the geese off you?
Well, no, but one of them was mine all the same.
Well then, ask Mrs. Oakshott
Well,
first.
she told me to ask you.
Well, you could ask the King of Prussia for all I care. Now get out!
The inquirer flitted away in the darkness.
Ha! This may save us a visit to Brixton Road. Come, let us see what is to be made of this fellow.
Sorry, old man, I was addressing the audience. Could you repeat that?
Ha! This may save us a visit to Brixton Road. Come, let us see what is to be made of this fellow.
We strode through the stalls surrounded by people who were disorganized.
With this scattered knot, please stand. We must pass here. Yes, yes, please. Justice demands we pass. Yes, no, yes. Yes, bit of a hurry. Yes, yes, yes. Fugitive escaping. Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Excuse me. Do you, madam, also use lime cream? Delightful.
Holmes chased after the man. In the gaslight, he looked as if his face was drained of all colour.
Who are you? What do you want?
You will excuse me, but I could not help overhearing the questions you asked to Mrs. Breckenridge just now. I believe I could be of assistance to you.
What, you? Who are you? What could you possibly know of this matter?
My name is Sherlock Holmes. It is my business to know what other people do not know.
Oh, but you can know nothing of this.
Sir, I know everything of it. You are pertaining to trace some geese sold by Mrs. Oakshott of Brixton Road to a woman named Breckenridge, and by her to Mrs. Windigate of the Sticks and Stones pub. By her, in turn, to their Christmas Goose Club, of whom Mr. Henry Baker is a member.
Oh, sir, you are just the man I have longed to meet. I can only tell you how interested I am in this matter.
Then we should discuss it in a cozy room rather than in this windswept marketplace. And may I know the name of the person who I am assisting?
My name is John Robinson.
No, your real name. It is always awkward doing business with an alias.
Well then, my real name is James Ryder.
Precisely so. Head bellman at the Hotel Cosmopolitan. We shall hail a cab, and soon I shall tell you everything you wish to know.
Judging by the wretched look on the man's face, he was neither sure of something good or bad that was about to happen to him. Soon we were back into your lounge.
Here we are. The fire looks very seasonable in this weather. You look cold, Mr. Ryder. Pray take that chair by the fire. Now then, you want to know what became of those geese?
Yes, sir.
Or rather, fancy that goose. It was one bird in which you were interested, white with a black bar across the tail.
Oh, sir, can you tell me where it went to?
It came here.
What, here?
Yes, and a most remarkable bird it proved. It laid an egg after it was dead. The shiniest, prettiest little egg that ever was seen. The game is up, Ryder. Steady on, man. Watson, give him a dash of brandy.
For a moment, Ryder just staggered and nearly fallen, but brandy brought a tinge of colour into his cheeks, and he sat staring with frightened eyes at his accuser.
I have almost every link in my hands and all the proof I need. There is little you need tell me. Still, that little may as well be cleared up to make the case complete. You have heard, Ryder, of the Countess of Morcar's priceless stone?
It was Catherine Cusack who told me of it.
I see, her ladyship's maid. Well, the temptation of sudden wealth so easily acquired was too much for you, as it has been for better men before you. However, you were not very scrupulous in the means you used. There is the makings of a very pretty villain in you. You knew that this man Horner had been concerned in theft before, and that suspicion would rest easily upon him. You and Cusack managed that he should be the man sent for. When he left, you rifled the jewel case, raised the alarm, and had this unfortunate man arrested.
For God's sake, have mercy! Think of my father, of my mother. It would break their hearts. I never went wrong before. I never will again. Oh, don't bring it to court, sir. For God's sake, don't!
Get back in your chair, Mr. Ryder. It is all very well to cringe and crawl now, but you thought little of this poor man Horner in jail for a crime of which he knew nothing.
I will fly, Mr. Elms. I will leave the country. Then the charge against him will break down.
We will talk about that. And now let us hear a true account of the next act. How came the stone into the goose, and how came the goose to the market? Tell us the truth, Mr. Ryder, for there lies your only hope of safety.
I will tell you it just as it happened, sir. When Horner had been arrested, it seemed to me that it would be best to get away with the stone at once. I made for my sister's house. She lives in the Brixton Road, where she fattens fowls for the market. All the way there, every man I met seemed to be a detective, and for all that it was a cold night, the sweat was pouring down my face. I went into my sister's backyard and smoked a pipe and wondered what to do. I had a friend who went to the bad and had been serving his time in Pentonville. I knew he would be true to me, for I knew one or two things about him.
He would show you how to turn the stone into money.
Yes, sir. But how to get it safely to where he lived? I thought of my agonies coming from the hotel. If I was seized and searched, there would be the stone in my pocket. I stood
looking at the geese waddling about my feet, and suddenly an idea came into my head.
And you would beat the best detective who has ever lived.
That's right, sir. You see, my sister had told me some weeks before that I might have the pick of her geese for a Christmas present. I would take my goose now, and in it I would carry my stone. I caught one of the birds, a fine big one, white, with a barbed tail. Prying its bill open, I thrust the stone down its throat as far as my finger could reach. The bird gave a gulp, and I felt the stone pass along its gullet and into its crop. But the creature flapped and struggled, and out came my sister to know what was the matter. As I turned to speak, the brute broke loose and fluttered off among the others.
Whatever will you do with that bird, Jem?
Well, you said you'd give me one for Christmas, and I was feeling which one was the fattest.
Oh, we've set yours aside. Jem's bird, we call it. It's the big white one over yonder.
Oh, well, thank you, Maggie. But if it's all the same to you, I'd rather have the one I was handling just now.
Yeah, there's a good £3 every year, and we found it especially for you.
Oh, never mind. I'll have the other, and I'll take it now.
Just as you like. Which is it you want then?
Oh, the one with the barbed tail, right in the middle of the flock.
Very well. Kill it and take it with you.
Well, I did as she said, Mr. Holmes, and I carried the bird all the way to Kilburn. I told my pal what I had done. He laughed until he choked. We got a knife and opened the goose. My heart turned to water, for there was no sign of the stone. I rushed back to my sister's and hurried into the backyard. There was not a bird to be seen. Where are they, old Maggie?
Gone to the dealer's, Jem?
Which dealers?
Miss Breckenridge of Covent Garden?
But was there another with a barbed tail, the same as the one I chose?
Yes, Jim, there are two bar-tailed ones. I could never tell them apart.
Well, then, of course, I saw it all, and I ran as hard as my feet would carry me to this Mrs. Breckenridge. But she had sold the lot, and not one word would she tell me as to where they had gone. You heard her yourselves tonight. My sister thinks that I am going mad. Sometimes I think that I am myself. And now I am myself a branded thief, without ever having touched the wealth for which I sold my character. Oh, God help me. A long silence ensued, broken only by the measured tapping of Sherlock Holmes' fingertips on the edge of the table.
Get out.
What? Oh, sir. Oh, heaven bless you.
No more words. Get out. After all, Watson, I am not retained by the police to supply their deficiencies. If Horner were in danger, it would be another thing, but this fellow will not appear against him, and the case must collapse. I suppose that I am commuting a felony, but it is just possible that I am saving a soul. This fellow will not go wrong again. He is too terribly frightened. Send him to jail now, and we make him a jailbird for life.
Besides, it is the season of forgiveness.
Precisely. Chance has put in our way a most singular and whimsical problem. Its solution is its own reward. If you will have the goodness to join me, Doctor, we shall finally have that supper.
Well done. Well done, old man. Lead the way.
A time of parties and presents and songs that we all love. Except Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which I, for one, got tired of in approximately 1958, 4 years before I was born, and which now causes me to dislocate my forefinger, stabbing the off button when it comes on the radio. But getting back to Christmas. Although this is a festive time of year, it can also be a difficult and stressful time for a certain group. A group whose needs all too often are overlooked in our society. That group is men. Why is the Christmas season so hard on men? There are many complex reasons, by which I mean women. This problem dates back to the very first Christmas. We know from the Bible that the wise men showed up in Bethlehem and gave the baby Jesus gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, gold is always a nice gift, but frankincense and myrrh, at least according to my dictionary, are gum resins. Who gives gum resins to a baby? The answer is men. The wise men, being men, didn't even start shopping for gifts until the last minute, when most of the stores in the greater Bethlehem area were closed for Christmas Eve. The only place still open was Big Stew's House of Myrrh. So the wise men showed up at the manger, handed their baby gifts to Mary, and headed for the eggnog. Mary looked at the gifts, which were not wrapped, nor were they accompanied by cards, rolled her eyes, tossed the gum resins to the goats, which ate them, and said, "Next Christmas, we're going to have some gift-giving rules." Well, this is basically where things stand today. At this point in the Christmas season, your standard woman has already purchased and wrapped thoughtful gifts for approximately 600 people, including her children, her relatives, her friends, her husband's relatives, her co-workers, the children of her friends, relatives of children of her friends, co-workers of friends of her relatives, husbands of her co-workers, relatives, friends, etc. She has also purchased several thoughtful gifts for nobody in particular, so she will not be in the horrifying position of receiving a gift from somebody for whom she does not have a retaliation gift. In contrast, your standard man at this point in the Christmas season has purchased 0 gifts. He has not yet gotten around to purchasing an acceptable gift for his wife for last Christmas. He did give her something last year, but he could tell by her reaction to it that she had not been dreaming of getting an auto emergency kit. Even though it was the deluxe model, with booster cables and an air compressor. Clearly, this gift violated an important rule, but the man had no idea what the rule was, and his wife was too upset to tell him. And now another Christmas is looming, and this man, terrified that he will screw up again, has been racking his brain for gift ideas for his wife. Nothing automotive this time. He won't make that mistake again. He's thinking weed whacker. But he's not sure. He's a nervous wreck. A lot of us men are. That's why we buy gifts at the very last minute, or optionally, never. It's not that we are thoughtless jerks. Well, all right, we're thoughtless, but we're not jerks. We're doing our best to get through a stressful season. And so, on behalf of all men, I ask all you women to cut us some slack and accept us for the imperfect beings that we are compared to you. And above all, in the spirit of another great Christmas carol, bring us some figgy pudding.
looking a little bloated and sluggish, it's because it was Thanksgiving not too long ago, and I haven't quite recovered yet. I have a special fondness for Thanksgiving, because apart from anything else, when I was growing up, it was the one time of the year we ate in our house. All the other days of the year, we just kind of put stuff into our mouths. You see, my mother was not a great cook. Now please, do not misunderstand me. My mother is a kindly, cheerful, saintly soul. And when she dies, she will go straight to heaven. But believe me, nobody there is going to say, "Oh, thank goodness you're here, Mrs. Bryson. Can you fix us something to eat?" Oh, no. To be perfectly fair, my mother had several strikes against her in the kitchen department. To begin with, she couldn't cook. Always a bit of a handicap where the culinary arts are concerned. Mind you, she didn't especially want to be able to cook. Anyway, she couldn't have if she wanted to. She had a career, you see, which meant she was always flying in 2 minutes before it was time to put dinner on the table. On top of this, she was a bit absent-minded. She tended to confuse similarly looking ingredients like sugar and salt, pepper and cinnamon, vinegar and maple syrup, corn flour and plaster of Paris. This often lent her dishes a bit unexpected change. Her particular specialty was to cook things while they were still in the packaging. Well, I was already full grown before I realized that cellophane wasn't a sort of chewy glaze. Combination of haste, forgetfulness, and charming incompetence where household appliances were concerned meant that most of her cooking experiences were punctuated with billows of smoke and the occasional small explosion. In our house, as a rule of thumb, it was time to eat when the firemen departed. Strangely, this suited my father. He had what you might call rudimentary tastes in food. His palate only responded to 3 flavors: salt, ketchup, and burnt. His idea of an outstanding meal was a plate that contained something green and unidentifiable, something brown and unidentifiable, and something charred. I'm quite sure that if you slow-baked, say, a loofah and covered it sufficiently with ketchup, Dad would have said, "Hey, this is pretty tasty." Good food, in short, was something that was wasted on him, so my mother worked hard for years to see that he was never disappointed. But on Thanksgiving, by some kind of miracle, she pulled out all the stops and outdid herself. She'd call us to the table, and there we would find, awaiting our unaccustomed delectation, a sumptuous spread of food. An enormous and glistening turkey, baskets of cornbread and warm rolls, vegetables you could actually recognize, a tureen of cranberry sauce, a bowl of exquisitely fluffed mashed potatoes, a salver of plump sausages, and much, much more. We would eat as if we hadn't eaten for a year, which in fact we hadn't. Then she would present the pièce de résistance, a golden, flaky crusted pumpkin pie surrounded by a Matterhorn of whipped cream. Oh, it was perfect. It was heaven. And has left me with the most profound joy and gratitude for this most wonderful of holidays. For Thanksgiving is the most splendid of occasions. Make no mistake. It remains a pure holiday, unsullied by commercialization. It involves no greeting cards, no trees to trim, no perplexed hunt through drawers and cupboards for decorations. At Thanksgiving, all you do is sit at a table, try to get your stomach into the shape of a beach ball, and then go watch a football game on TV. That's my kind of holiday. But perhaps the nicest and certainly the most noble aspect of Thanksgiving is that it gives you a formal, official occasion to give thanks for all those things for which you should be grateful. Speaking personally, I have a great deal to be thankful for. I have a great family. I have my health and retain full command of most of my faculties, albeit not always simultaneously. I live in a relative time of relative peace and prosperity. These are things for which I am grateful, and I am pleased to let the record show it. The only downside is that the passage of Thanksgiving marks the inescapable onset of Christmas. Any day now, any moment, my dear wife will appear beside me and announce the time has come to shift my distended stomach and get out the festive decorations. This is a dread moment for me with good reason, since it involves physical exertion, wobbly ladders, live electricity, wriggling ascents into the attic, and the collaborative direction of said dear Mrs. All things with the power to do me substantial and permanent injury. I have a terrible feeling that today may be that day. Still, it hasn't happened yet, and for that, of course, I give my sincerest thanks.
We welcome you all again with enthusiasm, pride, and respect. Thank you for being here. I want to speak to you of Robert Burns, still considered the poet laureate of all Scotland. He wrote 29 Christmas songs and one song that we sing every New Year's, Old Lang Syne. But before I go any further, something needs to be said. The Stratford Players are one of the most noble organizations I have ever performed with, and that's a result of someone's kindness, caring, dignity, and simple approach to life. We would not be here without our gifted director, Marcia Kennedy. A round of applause for this noble lady. Come forward. I know you didn't expect this, but that's what you expect from a Scot. As I said, Robert Burns is a very noble gentle. I'm not sure how many people have a Scottish background here, but he was formed a dislike for our English brothers and sisters because he was born 6 years after the clearing of the Highlands. They were less than stellar with our Scottish friends. So when he wrote his poems, his books, he wrote it in Scottish dialects so the damn English wouldn't buy his books. He tried to be a farmer. He tried to be a politician. He tried to be a government employee. It just didn't work. All he was ever good at was poetry. But there was no economics for him. And he fell in love with a woman named Patricia. And he loved her with all his heart. He said that he could not cast his eyes upon this lass and not feel he had to desert. He was very moved. So his plan was to go to the Americas, make his fortune, return, and marry Patricia. Simple as that. 2 weeks before he was ready to leave, he found out that she was with child. He simply couldn't leave. Before he knew this, he wanted to write a poem to her to assure her that he was going to return to her side no matter what the obstacle, not even if hell should bar the way. And the name of this poem is Red, Red Rose, so allow me, please. My love is like a red, red rose, newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody, sweetly played in tune. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear,
till all the seas run dry. Till all the seas run dry, my dear, and the rocks melt from the sun. And I will come again, my dear, so the sands of life doth run. So fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well a while. And I will come again, my dear, though it were 10,000 miles. Thank you.
A Christmas Childhood. Patrick Kavanagh wrote this poem, having spent a Christmas season alone in his flat in Dublin. The poem is filled with nostalgia for rural family life. His memories come to us through Christian imagery from the story of the birth of Jesus. Patrick was Irish. One side of the potato pits was white with frost. How wonderful that was! How wonderful! And when we put our ears to the paling post, the music that came out was magical. The light between the ricks of hay and straw was a hole in heaven's gable. An apple tree with its December glinting fruit we saw. Oh, you, Eve, were the world that tempted me. To eat the knowledge that grew in clay and death the germ within it. Now and then I can remember something of the gay garden that was childhood again. The tracks of cattle to a drinking place, a green stone lying sideways in a ditch, or any common sight the transfigured face of a beauty that the world did not touch. My father played the melodeon outside at our gate. There were stars in the morning east, and they danced to his music. Across the wild bogs, his melodeon called to the Lennons and Callans. As I pulled on my trousers in a hurry, I knew some strange thing had happened. Outside in the cowhouse, my mother made the music of milking. The light her stable lamp was a star, and the frost of Bethlehem made it twinkle. A water hen screeched in the bog, fast feet going crunching the way for ice of the potholes. Somebody wistfully twisted the bellows wheel. My child poet picked out the letters on the grey stone. In silver, the wonder of a Christmas townland, the winking glitter of a frosty dawn. Cassiopeia was over Cassidy's hanging hill. I looked, and 3 wind bushes rode across the horizon. The 3 wise kings. An old man passed and said, "Can't you make it talk, the melodeon?" I hid in the doorway and tightened the belt on my box-pleated coat. I nicked 6 nicks on the doorpost with me penknife's big blade. There was a little one for cutting tobacco, and I was only 6 Christmases of age. My father played the melodeon, my mother milked the cows, and I had a prayer like a white rose pinned on the Virgin Mary's blouse.
On December 21st, 1968, the first manned mission to the moon blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. The plan called for the 3 astronauts on board to come within about 70 miles of the moon, circle it several times, and return safely home, all while broadcasting their feats to the world below. By gaining operational experience, testing equipment, and checking out potential landing sites, they also hoped to pave the way for a moonwalk the following year. This would also meet former President John F. Kennedy's challenge to do so before the end of the decade. Up until then, the United States had undergone an extremely turbulent and polarizing year. Yet citizens of all stripes united in support of Apollo 8. Tens of thousands of spectators turned out the morning of the launch, including 2 Supreme Court justices and aviation pioneer Charles Lindbergh. Newspapers went giddy over humankind's potential. The New York Times called Apollo 8 the most fantastic voyage of all time. Minutes after a straightforward departure, Mission Commander Frank Borman, Command Module Pilot James Lovell Jr., and Lunar Module Pilot William Anders eased into Earth's orbit in order to check for spacecraft damage. Finding no problems, they then propelled themselves into uncharted territory. They voyaged for 3 days through the vastness of space. No previous manned flight, either US or Soviet, had ever left Earth's gravitational field. On December 24th, the astronauts became the first humans to see the dark side of the moon and the first to enter lunar orbit. They circled the celestial body 10 times. By then, they had also become the first to see the Earth from afar, as a whole planet, a viewpoint Anders famously captured in his Earthrise photo. Under the insistence of NASA administrators and public relations specialists, the Apollo 8 crew hauled a TV camera up into space with them. They managed 6 live broadcasts over the course of the mission. The 4th of the 6 broadcasts aired on Christmas Eve from about 9:30 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right in prime time, according to TV Guide. This showing attracted an audience of about 1 billion, or roughly 1 out of every 4 people on the planet. As Apollo 8 as it rounded the moon for a 9th time, Borman got the prime time Christmas Eve broadcast started by saying the crew would take the audience through a lunar sunset. Pointing their camera out the window, the astronauts next began a running diary of what they could see, from the pitch black sky to the moon's various mountains, craters, and seas. To conclude the broadcast, they took turns reading the opening verses of the Bible. Borman then signed off saying, "Good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless you all of you on this good earth." As Borman and Lovell later explained, they got no instructions from NASA except to do something appropriate. They said they selected this particular passage from the book of Genesis because it was the foundation of many of the world's religions, not just Christianity. Not everyone agreed with the choice. A well-known atheist filed a lawsuit over the reading. The Supreme Court dismissed the suit due to lack of jurisdiction. Shortly past midnight on Christmas morning, the crew ignited an engine burn to leave lunar orbit and start for home. Lovell announced the burn's success, telling an anxious mission control, "Please be informed, there is a Santa Claus." The astronauts then settled down to a Christmas dinner of real, not freeze-dried turkey and stuffing, plus miniature bottles of brandy. On December 27th, they re-entered Earth's atmosphere at speeds of more than 24,000 miles per hour and splashed into the Pacific Ocean, where an aircraft carrier picked them up. As intended, the mission begot even greater successes. Fewer than 7 months later, on July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped out onto the lunar surface.
our director, Marcia Kennedy, has once more given me a piece to present that has triggered a memory from my Air Force career. My very secret job at that time was to monitor Soviet military communications to determine their capabilities and their intentions. But not uncommonly this time of year, we'd hear them wishing us a Merry Christmas. We appreciated it, of course, but it also made us wonder, how secret really was our job? Charles Brewer never expected to be spending Christmas Eve nearly knee-deep in the mud of northern France. Stationed on the front lines, the 19-year-old British lieutenant from the Bedfordshire Regiment of the 2nd Battalion shivered in a trench with his fellow soldiers. After Great Britain had entered World War I in August of 1914, many of them expected to make short work of the enemy and be home for Christmas. Nearly 5 months and 1 million lives later, however, the war had broken down into intractable trench warfare with no end in sight. Although disappointed to be far from home on Christmas Eve, Brewer at least could take solace from the fact that the perpetual rain, which made moving through the trenches as much of a slog as the war itself, had finally abated on that moonlit night. All was jarringly quiet on the Western Front when a British sentry suddenly spied a light glistening on the German parapet less than 100 yards away. Warned that it might be a trap, Brewer slowly raised his head above the soaked sandbags that protected his position, and gazing through the barbed wire maze, saw a sparkling Christmas tree. Looking down the line of German trenches, he saw a whole string of small conifers glimmering like beads on a necklace. Brewer then noticed the rising of a faint sound that he had never before heard on a battlefield. A Christmas carol. The German words to Stille Nacht were not familiar, but the tune, Silent Night, certainly was. When the German soldiers finished singing, their foes broke out in cheers, and used to returning fire, the British now returned in song with the English version of the carol. When dawn broke on Christmas morning, something even more remarkable happened. In sporadic pockets along the 500-mile Western Front, unarmed German and Allied soldiers tentatively emerged from their trenches and cautiously crossed no man's land. Those fatal fields between the trenches that were littered with eviscerated trees and deep craters. They crossed in order to wish each other a Merry Christmas. Political leaders had ignored the call of Pope Benedict XV to cease fighting around Christmas. But soldiers in the trenches decided to stage their own unofficial and spontaneous armistices anyway. Far from an organized top-down ceasefire, the Christmas truce instead was a series of small armistices that bubbled up from the men in the foxholes who decided to fraternize with the enemy. We shook hands, wished each other a Merry Christmas, and soon were conversing as if we had known each other for years. British Corporal John Ferguson wrote of the encounter between his Seaforth Highlanders and the German forces. Here we were laughing and chatting to men whom only a few hours before we'd been trying to kill. Almost always it was the Germans who at least indirectly invited the truce, writes Stanley Weintraub in his book, Silent Night, the story of the World War I Christmas truce. That was partly because the Germans were winning the war at that point. And many of the troops had worked in Great Britain before the war and could speak English. The soldiers exchanged makeshift gifts such as cigarettes, chocolates, sausages, liquor, plum puddings, and they likely swapped stories about the miseries of war. German soldiers in Uplands even rolled barrels of beer that they had seized from a nearby brewery across no man's land to the British trenches where, according to British soldier Frank Richards, they raised toasts to one another's health and united in agreement that French beer was rotten stuff. In some cases, the no man's land between the trenches even came alive with pickup soccer games where soldiers navigated around shell craters and barbed wire. We marked the goals with our caps, German Lieutenant Johannes Niemann recalled. Teams were quickly established for a match on the frozen mud. The Fritzes beat the Tommies 3-2. Where soldiers lacked a real leather ball to kick with their waterlogged boots, tin cans and small sandbags sufficed. Not every fighting man, particularly those who had just seen comrades killed in action, felt moved by the Christmas spirit, however. Gunfire continued to be exchanged in certain locations along the front. The unsanctioned truce concerned high-ranking officials who were afraid that their men might lose the will to fight. And it outraged others, including one young German corporal. Such a thing should not happen in warfare, Adolf Hitler scolded his fellow soldiers. Have you no German sense of honor left? As the sun set on Christmas, the fighters retreated to their respective trenches. A few ceasefires held until New Year's Day. In most cases, however, the war resumed on December 26th. At 8:30 a.m. in Uplands, Captain Charles Stockwell of the 2nd Royal Welsh Fusiliers fired 3 shots into the air and raised a flag that read, "Merry Christmas." His German counterpart raised a flag that read, "Thank you." The two men then mounted the parapets, saluted each other, and returned to their sodden trenches. The guns of World War I did not fall silent again until the signing of the armistice on November 11th, 1918. The Christmas truce, however, would stand as a remarkable example of shared humanity and brotherhood on the battlefield. It also provided an unforgettable memory for many, such as the British soldier who confessed in a letter the following day, "I wouldn't have missed the experience of yesterday for the most gorgeous Christmas dinner in all of England."
Come, they told me, pum. To lay before the king, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum. So to honor him, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum, when we come, baby Yesu, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. I am a poor boy too, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. I have no gift to bring, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. That's fit to give our king, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum. Shall I play for you, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum, on my drum? Mary nodding, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. The ox and lamb kept time, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. I played my drum for him, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. I played my best for him, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum, rum-pa-pum-pum. Then he smiled at me, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. Me and my drum, me and my drum, me and my
I fell in love with the minister's son the winter I turned 14. He was not Chinese. He was white as Mary in the manger. For Christmas, I prayed for this blonde-haired boy, Robert, and a slim new American nose. When I found out that my parents had invited the minister's family over for Christmas Eve dinner, I cried. What would Robert think of our shabby Chinese Christmas? What would he think of our noisy Chinese relatives who lacked proper American manners? What terrible disappointment would he feel upon not seeing a roasted turkey and sweet potatoes, but Chinese food? On Christmas Eve, I saw that Mother had pulled out all the stops in creating a strange menu. She was pulling black veins out of the backs of fleshy prawns. The kitchen was littered with appalling mounds of raw food. A slimy rock cod with bulging eyes pleaded not to be thrown into the pan pot oil. Tofu, which looked like stacks of wedges of rubbery white sponges. A bowl soaking dried fungus back into life. A plate of squid, their backs crisscrossed with knife marks, so they resembled bicycle tires. And then they all arrived. The minister's family and all my relatives, and the clamor of doorbells and rumpled Christmas packages. Robert grunted hello, and I pretended he was not worthy of existence. Dinner threw me deeper into despair. My relatives licked the ends of their chopsticks, reached across the table, and dipped into the dozen or so plates of food. Robert and his family waited patiently for the platters to be brought to them. My relatives murmured with pleasure when my mother brought out the whole steamed fish. Robert grimaced. Then my father poked his chopsticks just below the fisheye and plucked out the soft meat. "Amy, your favorite," he said, offering me the tender fish cheek. I wanted to disappear. At the end of the meal, my father leaned back and belched loudly, thanking my mother for her fine cooking. "It's a polite Chinese custom to show you are satisfied," explained my father to our astonished guests. Robert was looking down at his plate with a reddened face. The minister managed to muster up a quiet burp. I was stunned into silence for the rest of the night. After everyone had gone, my mother said to me, "You want to be the same as the American girls on the outside." She handed me an early gift. It was a miniskirt in beige tweed. "But inside, you must always be Chinese. You must be proud that you are different. Your only shame is to have shame." And even though I didn't agree with her then, I knew that she understood how much I had suffered during that evening's dinner. It wasn't until many years later, long after I had gotten over my crush on Robert, that I was able to fully appreciate her lesson and the true purpose behind our peculiar menu. For Christmas Eve that year, she had chosen all my favorite food.
It's the holiday season, a time when many of us look at our credit card balances and say a bad word.
But do we really have to go into debt to celebrate the holidays?
No! Think about the message of the heartwarming holiday song about the little drummer boy.
He was poor, and he had no gift to bring to the baby Jesus.
So what did he do? The little drummer boy gave the gift of his talent, which consisted of whacking relentlessly on a drum, which was no doubt greatly appreciated by the baby Jesus and his exhausted parents.
Why don't we do the same thing this holiday season? We don't mean whacking the drum for your loved one.
Although that would still be more than giving them a fruitcake.
We mean using your artistic talent to create a unique holiday-themed craft gift that sends the heartfelt message. I spent very little on this.
Wait a minute, you're saying? What if I have no artistic talent?
No problem. You don't need artistic talent. All you need is a red ribbon, a pine cone.
Oh, how perfect is that? No need to travel to some national park. You can find one in the parking lot or right here.
To make your holiday craft, get some item that you have sitting around your house. A candle, bar soap, flower pot, a spatula, anything really. This is quite good. Now, simply use your ribbon to tie a pine cone to it. Are you ready? No, it's going to fall. Voila! We've done it! Oh, you've transformed your ordinary household item into a unique holiday-themed craft gift not sold in stores. Perhaps you're thinking, that seems like a lot of work for a stupid and useless gift. Isn't there an easier way?
Yes, there is. You can order a ready-made stupid and useless gift featured in our annual holiday gift guide, which for the past 27 years has been rated the nation's #1 gift guide by a distinguished panel of distinguished panelists.
As always, every item in this guide is a real product that, as always, we actually purchased on Chick's credit card.
Also, every item has been subjected to a rigorous quality control procedure under which we look at the item with a very serious expression and say,
But enough with the legal mumbo jumbo. Let's take a look at the items that made the cut for this year's guide.
If you're like many imaginary people, you have often said, I sure would like some toast, but at the moment I have no bread or toaster with me.
Well, we're pleased to announce that the days of not being able to have toast whenever you want are over.
Thanks to inflatable toast. When you want toast, you simply take the product out of the tin, blow it up, and voila.
That's French for what the heck.
And voila.
It's still French for what the heck.
And voila. You have something that looks vaguely like toast when viewed in a dim light. The only drawback that we can see is that you cannot actually eat it.
But, on the positive side, you can use it again and again.
Now, everyone's nightmare scenario. You have a slice of pizza, but you don't want to eat it right away, and you don't want to give up the use of one or both of your hands to carry it.
Until now. Your only practical option was to carry the slice on your head.
Which is still the system used throughout Europe.
But now, there's a better way. And that way is the pizza pouch. This is a triangular plastic pocket with a lanyard attached. You slide your pizza slice into the pocket.
Now both your hands. Drive a car. Go jogging, dance in a ballet recital, conduct an orchestra, perform open heart surgery, knowing your pizza slice is right there around your neck when you need it.
This is also a very useful item to wear to a business meeting, dental appointment, court appearance, or any other occasion where you're concerned that there might just not be enough food. Every once in a while, somebody comes up with a product so unusual, so extraordinary, so unexpected, we strongly suspect alcohol is involved.
That is definitely the case with handerpants, which are billed as underpants for your hands.
Why do you need underpants for your hands, you ask?
Well, according to the manufacturer, handerpants have, and this is a direct quote, hundreds of uses. So that clears that up.
Dogs are wonderful animals, but they're not good at stealth.
Not at all. They tend to barge into situations barking loudly.
They have not mastered the technique of creeping silently around before pouncing suddenly upon their prey like cats.
The result is that the average household dog, although it desperately would like to, never gets anywhere near any kind of prey.
This is okay, because your modern dog doesn't really need to capture prey.
And now you can turn that special dog on your holiday gift list into something more, thanks to this dog camouflage hoodie.
This thing renders your dog completely invisible. You are not
is the perfect gift for the person who lacks one, but for some insane reason would like to come into closer contact with squirrels.
According to the manufacturer, this squirrel caller is suitable for both professional and recreational squirrel calling. It can reproduce the sounds of both tree and ground squirrels, including alarm bark, distress scream, and ground squirrel chatter.
We are not entirely sure why a squirrel would be attracted to the sound of another squirrel barking out an alarm.
To be honest, I didn't even know that squirrels bark.
Nevertheless, we highly recommend this product, which in addition to calling squirrels, makes a terrific icebreaker at cocktail parties.
Okay, everybody, guess what this is? A distress scream or a ground squirrel squeal?
Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this year's holiday gift giving guide.
Happy shopping!
And Merry Christmas!
And who the Cowan's fun, but we wandered many a weary fit, sing old lang syne. For old lang syne, my troll, for old lang syne. We'll talk of cope or kindness yet, for old lang syne. We've twice pedalled in the burn, from morning sun till night, but see